This is Terms of Reference podcast number 178.
So we do have classes. It's really after the class when they get online. They're part of this network where they're talking about everything from legal issues they're having at work, activism, salary negotiation. There's a jobs channel. In a way, it's almost organized by anxieties or challenges you're having at work. This is the challenge I'm having, or this is a frustration I'm having at work. Has anyone else gone through this? And we've got 10,000 women in the community.
This is Terms of Reference. I'm your host, Stephen Laddick. Even though we work on hundreds of different issues across a similarly diverse group of settings, I think the argument could be made that the work of the social sector is ultimately focused on creating a world where all humans have equal opportunity to flourish. This is at the base of what we're doing with programming that seeks to improve financial systems, agricultural practices, environmental protections, health systems, and education. And one of the things we know, unequivocally, is that women have received the short end of the stick, no matter how you measure it. Here's the thing. Marginalization of women doesn't just happen in traditional development settings. It's alive and well in the US, Europe, and, well, every other leading economy on the planet. This is why I'm especially pleased to have Claire Wasserman as my guest for the 178th Terms of Reference podcast. Claire is the founder of Ladies Get Paid, an organization focused currently on empowering women in the workplace. As you'll hear in the show, I found Claire when seeking to learn more about Red Bull Amaphiko, for which she is the deputy U.S. editor. Red Bull Amaphiko is a collaborative platform for social entrepreneurs that is sponsored by the energy drink company of the same name. But our conversation quickly turns to how Ladies Get Paid was founded and has quickly expanded into a phenomenon of 10,000 women and growing. You're going to love this show, where we talk about women rising up to get what they deserve and how one woman has made the leap to be a leader in that movement. I spoke with Claire in New York. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor.
The Terms of Reference podcast is sponsored by International Solutions Group, helping to improve the social impact of governments, UN agencies, NGOs, and companies for more than 10 years. Visit ISG online at www.theisg.com.
Hello, Claire. Thank you so much for being on the Terms of Reference podcast today.
I am very excited to be here, Stephen.
Claire, you are a woman of the world. I know that you are on an airplane an awful lot. Where do we find you sitting today?
Shockingly, I am at home in New York. I can't believe it. It's almost like when I'm not traveling, I feel like a tourist. But I will be on a plane on Monday.
You know, we've been living overseas long enough now. Our listeners know this. I mean, they've got our backstory. But our family's been living overseas long enough now that when we go to America, it's like being a tourist now. You know, I go home and it's like, wow, look at this. Really wide boulevards. People stop at red lights. It's super cool.
Yeah. And also being from New York, it's like, you know, every time I come back, there's a new condo on my block.
Oh.
And then I have to remember I probably contributed to the gentrification. So I don't know how much I can complain. But,
Preach, but yeah. I'll one up you on the Bangkok. I think there's three new apartment buildings right across the street from me. But we digress. You are the founder of a social enterprise called Ladies Get Paid. You're also the U.S. deputy editor for Red Bull Amaphiko. I found you through an article I saw in Fast Company magazine about the Red Bull Academy. And I wanted to touch on that flavor to, you know, have you just give us the 2 minutes on what that, you know, what is Red Bull doing in the social enterprise world and what's their focus and what are they contributing there. But then I want to circle back and really spend our time talking about Ladies Get Paid and how you're making a difference there. So without further ado, why don't we start out by you telling us about, you know, what's Red Bull doing, and what Red Bull Amaphiko is and what it does.
So when I first started talking to Red Bull, I asked them the exact same question that you just asked me. What are you doing in the social impact space?
You're an energy drink. Stop that.
Yeah. And their response to me was fantastic. It was, you know, giving wings to athletes, everything that they'd previously done in the way that they've supported extreme sports. They said, well, why don't we give wings to social entrepreneurs? And it's really interesting. It's not been going on too long. So I feel very privileged to be part of kind of the beginning process of Red Bull figuring out where they make sense in the social impact space. And here's what we're doing. So there's a magazine. that covers people all over the world who are doing things in the nonprofit space, for profit. There just has to be a social impact element core to the mission. So we're not talking about a product where it's like a one for one, where they donate abroad. It's really where the work that they do is giving back in and of itself. Pretty broad. For me, I am looking to cover US based. And US for Amaphiko is new. Actually, they began this initiative in South Africa, and then they moved on to Brazil. And what they do on the ground is they host these 10-day academies. This is extremely hard to get into. There's an application process. They're looking for a diversity of initiatives. If you get in, you attend this almost like boot camp incubator where there are mentorship opportunities. There are talks, a lot of bonding between entrepreneurs. I actually find that is probably the most
sure. The network is always the most powerful thing, right? I mean, that's what it's all about.
And especially for those who, especially, I don't know, it depends where they're from, but, for example, somebody in, let's say, the middle of the country, America, they might not be around other entrepreneurs or other social entrepreneurs as much as me in New York, where all my friends seem to be entrepreneurs. So I think for them, it's really special to have 10 days where they are around people who understand what they go through and the sacrifices they make. And it was amazing to watch. This past year, it was in Baltimore. It was the first time they've done the academy in the U.S. And yeah, I just feel wonderful to be part of it.
I'm going to out myself here. What does Amaphiko mean? Do we have any idea?
Yes, so it's Zulu. I need to make sure that my Zulu translation is correct, but I believe it means wings. So we're really hammering that home.
Sure. Okay. It's always the simplest answer, right? And full disclosure as well. The reason why I thought it was cool to find out about Red Bull is because obviously I'm sitting in the home of Red Bull right here in Bangkok. And I'm like, they give this drink away regularly here, everywhere. And so, yeah, that's great. So, cool. One last question to that before we kind of transition over. Is there, you said there's a magazine in this academy. Is there an award process? Is there any funding involved? Or is it really just sort of the networking opportunity, the access to mentors, these kinds of things?
Yeah, it's the latter. So there's no financial exchange in terms of funding, no equity taken. I should also mention that the support for the participants in the academy extends beyond those 10 days. So it's actually an 18-month program where they've been assigned a mentor who they do regular check-ins. One thing I'll say about the money part is anybody in the social, anybody who participates in the academy, if there's something that they're doing that they think makes sense to team up with Red Bull and there is a money exchange, they're totally open. So, for example, sponsoring an event or providing space, in-kind donations, it's really case by case. But these entrepreneurs, they have us on speed dial. So it's, they, and they have free Red Bull. I don't want to say for life, but we drank it during the academy that I think I might be good for life. But don't put that in the podcast. I don't think Red Bull does that.
Sure.
And the other thing I would mention about the program is, yes, there's a magazine. Yes, there's a 10-day academy. But there's also a community. So for those who either don't get into the academy or don't apply, there is this community space where you can create a project page, talk about what you're doing, talk about your open needs if you're looking for aid or collaboration. And this is a way for people to continue to connect because, again, with the academy, it's very select who gets in. So definitely check out amaphiko.redbull.com and you'll see all of that there.
Cool. Now, is Ladies Get Paid? Is that connected, or did you get launched out of that by any way, or was it a completely separate initiative?
I didn't get in. No, I'm just kidding.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, we're very awkward. No, I knew a good friend of mine. I had helped get a job, not at Red Bull, but elsewhere. And when he found out at Red Bull that they were hiring for somebody to help with build outs, kind of the U.S. Part of this initiative, and specifically looking for an editor and writer for the magazine, he suggested me. So that was nice he got me back for having gotten him a job. And when I met with Red Bull Amaphiko, they told me, quite frankly, they were excited to bring me on board because I was a social entrepreneur, and that I would be incredibly empathetic to these, again, people who are doing work that should make money, in some extent, but that's not what drives them. So of course, with that, there's a lot of sacrifices, and that I would understand it and cover it thoughtfully. And they also were interested, and this is great, they were interested in me writing about myself, that they wanted me to talk about Ladies Get Paid. They want to support my initiative, that it was a real benefit for them. So no, I didn't get into the academy. No, it wasn't launched out of there, but it's been brought into the family of Red Bull, which is great to not have to bifurcate my two jobs. So
sure.
There's no side hustle. They really work together.
That's fantastic. So we've arrived at this moment now. I mean, I'm waiting on bated breath. What do Ladies Get Paid? I mean, are you just giving away money or what's the deal here?
I wish. No.
Are you a funding organization, or I'm going to assume not?
No, maybe one day. I mean, we call ourselves, we provide tools and support so that women can rise up at work. And how we define rising up at work, largely it's getting women into leadership positions. It's getting them paid properly, closing the wage gap. And the support part, it comes through education we provide. We do workshops, but really it's this online community that we've built where women from all over the world are sharing advice and resources with each other. So, though we do have classes, it's really after the class when they get online. They're part of this network where they're talking about everything from legal issues they're having at work, activism, salary negotiation. There's a jobs channel. In a way, it's almost organized by anxieties or challenges you're having at work. And you should go to where, this is the challenge I'm having, or this is a frustration I'm having at work. Has anyone else gone through this? And we've got 10,000 women in the community.
Wow.
And a woman from Romania will jump in and she'll give her advice. And then there'll be a woman from Oklahoma and she'll share her story. Super powerful to watch that. And I think the biggest takeaway that everybody has is that they're not the only ones experiencing this. So it's profound.
Why is this your issue? How did you stumble on this? When did you wake up one day and you're like, this is my thing. I've got to do this.
Yeah, there definitely was an aha moment. I should just preface it by saying, I'm not somebody who ever really identified as, quote, a feminist. I think I had a complete misunderstanding of what that word meant. So doing Ladies Get Paid, sometimes it surprises me. I was certainly not, I wasn't a gender studies major in college. So the aha moment that happened was I was working in advertising and I went to a large awards ceremony in the south of France. Very fancy. There were people very high up in ad agencies. Unsurprisingly, most of the conference festival, it was a lot of older white men. Those were the people in power at these brands and agencies, and they were the ones who were sent. And the first night, I walked in and this older gentleman came up to me and he said, "Hi, whose wife are you?"
Oh.
And I was stunned. And now I'm actually quite grateful that happened, because I realized from there that there had been all these smaller experiences, but never so blatant as this. And sometimes when there's an experience that you just can't deny, you go, okay, that's not okay. That's when you get awakened. And long story short, from there, I went home after a week and I wrote about my experience. And there were, by the way, it was 7 days and 7 nights of similar conversations like that. It wasn't just one thing. And when I wrote about it, it was less about here's what happened to me, but more about my processing of it, right? So it was shame. Did I contribute, for conversations where I felt objectified? Mm-hmm. Well, was it because I was wearing a short dress? Was I too friendly? And then, it was sort of this meta article of the experiencing of processing and how exhausting that is. And if I'd been, I'd sort of been processing these things my whole career, imagine what I could have done. Imagine the productivity I could have had if I hadn't been spending all this extra time trying to navigate these dynamics. And I didn't have, the guts to publish it publicly. I felt really uncomfortable if I said, "Hi, I'm talking about, gender power issues, and maybe I'd get fired. You know,
it was your Regina McGuire moment, right? Or that would have been, sorry, Jerry Maguire. It could have been.
I was worried that if you Googled me that I would be known as this person. It's so ironic because I'm totally now known as this person. And I realized the fear I had in publishing it, that's exactly the reason why I do what I do. But, instead of publishing it, I sent it to a couple of friends and I asked them, what they thought and had they experienced something similar. And they wrote me back and they shared their stories and asked my permission if they could send it to their friends. And they did. And their friends wrote back with their story and sent it to friends. And so I watched this piece just sort of get viral in our inboxes, and this whole chain of women who didn't even know each other writing back, which is very much the basis of what we do, which is the personal stories as the springboard for larger conversations and strategic conversations about what we can do. And then we'll just skip forward probably a year, actually. It took me a year to really do anything. I just was reading a lot about the wage gap. These things were kind of percolating, bubbling up. I was getting increasingly angry, at statistics like Hispanic women make 55 cents to the dollar, and feeling really startled and ashamed that I didn't know that. I had thought it was 78 cents to the dollar. Mm-hmm. And this kind of ashamed part came from the fact that I'm an educated person. And if I don't know the reality of what women of color face, do other people know this? And I felt the responsibility to speak up. And the question is, though, for something as large and overwhelming as an issue of women in leadership and the wage gap, something as systemic as that, it's like, what can I as an individual possibly do? And so what I did was I hosted a town hall, just this open forum event where I said to women, come and talk about what money means to you. And I picked money because I knew that represents so much more. It would be a conversation about self-worth and value, and of course the wage gap and financial independence. And this town hall, it was so incredible to see all these women, just almost like a cork on a champagne bottle had come off. The energy in the room, it was like they had never been given the space, certainly not publicly, to talk about these things. And now, long story long, I went home and I immediately created a private Slack group for people to stay in touch with. Do you use Slack? Are you familiar with that platform?
I'm super familiar with Slack. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how many of our listeners are, but it absolutely is the communicate. We can put links to Slack up there and we can direct people to it.
Yeah, so I'd been using it at the company that I was working for. It's meant to be an internal communication tool so that employees don't really have to email each other. If they want to talk to one another, they just jump on this and there's different channels and it's instant message. I immediately thought that would make more sense for people to stay in touch with after the town hall than a Facebook group. Point being is that there were a couple of themes that kept coming up in the town hall. And I knew that if we did a Facebook page, it would become this infinite feed of a conversation and you wouldn't be able to navigate quickly to the theme, right, that you wanted to discuss. So instead, I picked Slack and I have channels based on the things that were spoken about. I invited everybody who attended. They joined. They asked me, could they invite friends? So I created a splash page with a sign up because the group was private. So the only way that somebody could get in is they'd have to go through my website. And I would add them manually. 10,000 people later,
I was just going to say, there's a lot of clicking going on. So, I kind of want to just ask a question. So, the moment for the town hall, did you fund this out of your back pocket? Did you just say, hey, whoever can show up, show up, like if you want to fly in or whatever, like, like I'm gonna get the space and I'll have a couple, bottles of water here for everybody to do, like. That's a pretty big leap to just sort of say I'm gonna hold my own town hall without really knowing you're gonna do anything from it. Did you sell tickets? Like, how'd that work?
Yeah, so I was working for a company called Working Not Working. So workingnotworking.com, and it is.
I love these names. I love these names.
Right? And I'm Ladies Get Paid. We basically, let's just tell you what we do in our title, and it's a super curated professional network, largely composed of creatives. And the way they define creatives, it's creative people specifically in tech, advertising, media, production. And most of the members, I don't know anymore, but they had been freelancers. And so the way that hirers were finding them was through their availability. So are you working? Are you not working? Are you available soon? So that it would be very efficient for somebody to find you and hire you quickly. When I wanted to do the town hall, they helped me put it on. So I was really lucky in that respect. They were extremely supportive. And so I did this first town hall, and I knew, honestly, a week later that I was going to have to quit my job and do this full time. I just, I had practiced being an entrepreneur for years before. I had a couple of failed initiatives and knew that I wanted to do something like this. And then it just became very clear, after the town hall and the Slack group and the conversations that were happening, that there was education to be had. There was career development and workshops. So I went to them and I told them that I wanted to leave, which was a tough decision. It was an easy and a tough decision. Easy in the sense that I knew instinctually that this is what I wanted to do, and tough because I loved what I was doing before and I loved that company. To answer your question about tickets, it was free. The space, it was 100 people could come, and that's how we did it. People showed up.
So now you're still adding people manually on your Slack group, which, I've seen Slack used. I'd love to just, get two more sentences from you about that. I'm really starting to see it pop up more and more for, sort of closed group forums or, these kind of intimate groups that you have. Is this a service that Slack just provides? Is it a paid service? Is it something, how hard is it to set up?
I am hacking Slack. They're not going to, I don't know if they'll love what I'm doing.
I will edit that out.
Yeah. No, and I, how I see it is I'm doing really honestly business development for them because I'm introducing thousands of people to their platform. And so though I'm not paying, it's a freemium model. Mm-hmm. So you can, you invite other people to it and they're basically signing up with free, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So it's free for me, free for them, but there's limited capabilities. So a reason to pay for it would be to archive conversations. So we can't access conversations past a certain time. Mm-hmm. I don't own the data. I'm not quite sure what the other benefits are of paying, but large companies, they're certainly paying, and it's worth it for them. I believe you pay per person. So obviously for a small company like me with, the goal of getting thousands and thousands of people to join, it's just not affordable for me to pay. But what's great is because I'm not charged, I don't have to charge people to join Slack. So that's great. I have never wanted to have a barrier to entry. I didn't want finances to prevent you from being able to join an organization like mine. So there's no membership fee. You do pay for individual classes. There are paid initiatives, but you get a ton out of Slack, and that's free for everybody. Very easy to sign up. Go to slack.com. Great tutorials. Really recommend it for anybody building a community. Can still do a Facebook page, but like I said, the conversations will be better organized.
Yeah, I agree with you though. Yeah, the Facebook page, you just get lost in it, and it just feels it's clunky, right? There's not a lot of functionality there. I mean, our company, International Solutions Group, the sponsor of this podcast, uses Slack as well, and just the channel system and the way you can call people out and hashtag stuff, it's just absolutely fantastic. Now I guess we've now sponsored Slack enough now. But so here you are. I love these stories. This is one of my favorite things in the whole world. Talking to other entrepreneurs myself, you took the leap. You did it. You had this moment where you're like, I'm going to have to quit my job. I've got to do this. And you held your town hall, and now you're 10,000 people in. What is it that you're doing? I'd love to hear, do you have some stories or something you can share with us about either a group of women or an individual or something where they've had now their aha moments, or they have, hey, look, I was, I thought I was I was a nobody, but now I'm on an executive track, or hey, I am now the executive, or now these types of things.
Oh my God, so many. And each time somebody writes me, I cry. My partner will look over at me and she's like, "Oh, you got another email, didn't you?" Because I'm getting all teary. There's been some women in the community, they've made massive changes, and some of them have made small changes that have had massive impact on themselves or for their company, really. A lot of women have now instituted diversity programming. They've recognized the importance of supporting women in this way, and they've gone to their HR department and they've said, listen, this is what I've experienced at Ladies Get Paid. I think we should do something like this here. And then the company invests in programming, or they'll bring Ladies Get Paid in to teach workshops. One story I'd like to share is a woman in the community told me that she came across her dream job, this description of a job. It was perfect for her, but she was worried about applying because there were a few requirements that she didn't have, and she wasn't perfect for it. And this is something that a lot of women experience. There's some kind of statistic that a man will apply for a job if he fulfills, I don't know, like 60% of, or like 55% of the job requirements, he'll still apply. A woman feels the need to have like 80% of the requirements before she'll apply. Mm-hmm. And this one was certainly one of these people. And so she didn't apply. Fast forward to a coffee meetup we did. We have Ladies Get Coffee and Ladies Get Drinks, which is the happy hour version. And so she went to this coffee meetup we hosted. She met another woman, and the woman said, you know what, I think you'd be perfect for this open position at my company. And she described the job. And it was the job that this woman thought she wouldn't apply for. And she said, well, that's so funny because I wasn't sure if I should apply. And this other woman said, you should definitely apply. I'm also going to introduce you to the hiring manager or the boss, whatever. And she did. Fast forward, and this woman got that job.
Super
so
cool.
I love that story because it does a couple of things. One, it shows the power of passing somebody forward. That just by an introduction, you can change somebody's life. And that's very much the giving. The more you give, the more you get. And people and Ladies Get Paid definitely understand that. And then the other part is, this woman who didn't want to apply, it illustrates this thing that we talk about, which is imposter syndrome. This feeling that you need to be, you're almost like a fraud if you aren't perfect, or you have to overperform to have legitimacy professionally. And so this woman experienced that, but then she made a change. I highly doubt she'll ever experience that again in any future job. I think she'll have the confidence now to just go for it.
That's really interesting. I thought you were going to go down the imposter syndrome or the fraud syndrome that, I'm just speaking from my perspective of many entrepreneurs feel, right? No matter what level of success you achieve, you end up walking into your office or your studio or whatever it is, and you're like, do I deserve this? I don't have the traditional resume. I don't have necessarily the credentials of others, and yet here I am. This seems to be working. When's the bottom going to fall out? Those kinds of things as well. And I'm wondering if many of the women you talk with have that kind of feeling as well.
Yeah, a lot of them do. And I've personally experienced that as well. And the thing that I always remind them is a couple of things. One, if you're passionate about what you do, that's the point. Always go back to, well, I should be here because I'm extremely passionate about it. The second thing is this is not a pass-fail test. Everything is a learning experience. And then so the third thing is that we're all making it up.
That's true.
We're all continually making it up. And if you say you are something, then you are that thing. And then the other part, which I don't know what you'll feel about this, but then we joke, have the confidence of a mediocre white man. We're like, what would a white man do? And do a gender reversal.
I'm going to speak for all tall white men in the world and say that's awesome. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, it's like, what would a man be feeling this? And I don't mean to generalize, but sometimes just by doing that gender reversal, it can give you the jolt of perspective that you need. And I guess the last part, and I'm pretty long-winded, so sorry if you have to edit me out here, but why would you take yourself out? Let somebody else tell you it's not working, or let somebody else reject you before you reject yourself, which means you have to be vulnerable. But, let somebody tell you you're not right for the job.
I just have this gut feeling, because I have no data to back it up, right? But as a representative of the middle-aged, white man population in the world, that all of the things that you just described there, the self-doubt, the self-defeating, why I don't belong here, all of those syndromes, I mean, I can point that finger at myself,
Yeah.
And I know amongst the group of men that I have in my life. Every single one of them, same exact thing. Now, flip that around and, how would we be able to take advantage of that or work within a network within a company or something like that? I'm sure that it's a much different structure and, it plays out much differently. But on a personal level, 1000%, all of those emotions are there as well. That's really interesting. Where's this going? So I've heard so far in the conversation, workshops, speaking events, online classes. I know you and I were kind of in the warm up before the podcast. You're going to the Fighting Eagles down at American University. You're going to give a talk down there next week.
Yeah.
What's the next 2 or 3 years look like? I mean, how's this thing getting built out? Are you going to scale this to 1 million people? What's your vision?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the focus for this next year actually is on conferences. So we hosted our first conference a couple weeks ago in New York. We had almost 150 women attend. It was called Get Money, Get Paid. And it was primarily focusing on salary negotiation, personal finance, some leadership training, and then a whole part on speaking up, the courage to speak up, and civic engagement. It went so well that we are going to take it on the road. We want to do it every couple of months in different cities. So that'll be great. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and the other thing that we're going to focus on is we've developed curriculum around civic engagement. Excuse me. We've developed curriculum around how to get civically engaged, curriculum on salary negotiation, and curriculum on how to advocate for yourself effectively at work. And we're training women in our community to teach those classes. Similar to almost like a yoga teacher certification, except we're not, you don't pay us to take our training program. What you do is you learn how to run a class, and then you take 50% of the profit. Everything we do, I should mention, is a profit share with all of our instructors and all of our committees that help us organize events, speakers. Everybody takes a piece of what we do. And so the goal is to build out an army of instructors who focus on salary negotiation and promotion. So, the Army, the conference, and then continuing to do corporate programming and college speaking. But again, really coming back to how can we get women to rise up and work? And that focus is leadership and closing the wage gap. Personally speaking, I should mention for a vision, I would love to do what we're doing, but for a couple of other subjects as well. So looking at, what is education, community, and advocacy for motherhood, for sexuality, for mental health. So basically looking at the very uncomfortable subjects and making, normalizing the conversation, showing people that, they're not alone, and giving education, because all of those things desperately need it. So right now, focus is career. Would love to see if we could extend it to other verticals.
I can't imagine that's far off. Given the type of momentum that you have right now. What are your barriers right now? Just sort of getting nuts and bolts on the enterprise itself. Is it funding? What your basically your ability to scale? Is it staffing? Is it funding? Is it just sort of hours in the day? Like are there other I'm trying to just sort of what are your biggest challenges here? Like, I'd love to believe that it's, a yellow brick road that's kind of just going, but.
I think the biggest challenge for all entrepreneurs is probably emotional and financial stability. And I say emotional.
No. That's never a challenge. We're all solid. We're totally solid.
I think, because like I said, practiced at being an entrepreneur before and had a few failed initiatives, I felt ready for the roller coaster. But I think that's a challenge that most people don't either anticipate or talk about. We usually focus on funding, but I think the emotional part is really important to acknowledge and have support ready to go for that. AKA a good therapist. But I would say for us, it's always funding. We're not looking for investment. We've been able to bootstrap this. I paid off all my debt in a year. We have expanded quickly because it's, in a way, a franchise model. There is the profit share. So we have women who have helped us grow in different cities, and they take a portion of the profit from events. So that's been very helpful to have that model and being able to scale. I brought on a partner recently. That's helped a lot. But yes, I would love to hire staff. We could go so much faster. It's just, we're going pretty fast as it is. And bringing on investment, I don't think is worth, we don't need to go as quickly. There isn't market competition in the way that maybe some other companies have. So in a way, as much as I want to go quickly and need funding to do it, I also think there can be a danger in going too fast. So right now it feels pretty good. Get back to me in a few months. So knock on wood, right now it's feeling like the yellow brick road. It's been an incredible year. And I think part of it's to do with the fact that I'm doing exactly what I was meant to do, so not to get all spiritual about it.
No, I love that. I love that. That is fantastic. I always end these conversations with these two questions. And I'm very interested to hear your answer to them. One is, who do you pay attention to in order to stay present, in order to stay up to date, in order to be inspired? Now, the easy answer is I've got this community of 10,000 women, right? But are there other places that you look, unusual places? Are there Twitter feeds, blog posts, periodicals, cat groups? I have no idea that you go to just, for inspiration and creativity?
Yeah. I am close with and look closely at other women's organizations. So I have a great network of women in similar, at the vantage point that I have, who sit at the intersection of a lot of different women. And it's a unique set of challenges to be at the head of a community like this, especially one that is pouring out their heart with challenges that can be, you can take on their stories, and that can be really draining sometimes. So having a group of women who understand what that's like has been really beneficial. So I don't feel like I have time to look at Twitter or read. I feel it's like you said, is your challenge a number of hours in a day? Absolutely. But building out that network of women in similar situations as me who run other women's organizations has been huge, really great, really great. And it's also helped in not feeling alone, because I ran Ladies Get Paid for almost a year by myself, maybe like 9 months before I took on a partner. So, it can get lonely, and also you lose perspective quickly. So those other women keep me in check and inspire me.
The last question is, what is it outside of Ladies Get Paid? Is there something, particularly in innovation, a new thing, a shiny new object, a process, a group that you're particularly excited about that you think needs a little bit more press, that you can give a shout out to, that you'd like to point your finger at?
Gosh, I'm, post-election, I don't know how political I can get here, but after Trump got elected, myself included, but the whole community of Ladies Get Paid, I think, really shifted to wanting to support civically engaged groups of all different kinds. There's a number of them that I could shout out to. The one that I think I'll give kudos to right now is an organization called DoSomething.org. And this is, you put in the cause that you're passionate about, and then there's these drop downs where you can, how much time do you have? What are the things you'd like to do to contribute? So it's a way of finding grassroots initiatives and participating in them. And this is run by a woman that we featured at our conference. She's super inspiring. I would love to have everybody check her out. Her name is Blair. Amani is her last name. And she's one of the bravest women I know. She's I would say, career activist. She's Muslim, queer, a woman, and I'm blown away by her. She just turned 24, which makes me think, God, I'm so unimpressive. So if you want to be inspired and slightly intimidated, check her out at Blair Amani on Twitter. She's got a fabulous feed.
Claire, a surprising and fascinating and absolutely delightful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Stephen.